Okay, so I hope it's okay for everybody to be recorded in this session. And yeah, please take notes and have fun. It's your turn, Michael.
Okay, you don't have to take notes for me if you don't want to. Although, you know, if it's required, I'm not arguing. I'm just saying it's up to you. Hi, I'm Michael. I am a teacher, and I've been teaching with role-playing games for the last 3 years at luckoflegends.com. So let me see if I can do this slideshow style and make it all fancy. So this is about creative agency and also about designing games specifically to teach, rather than simply using existing games as teaching tools. And by the way, if you would like, I know I can't see everyone when I share screen, but if you feel the need to raise a hand in the middle, please feel free. I'd love to chat. I will of course stop and talk. This is more meant to be a conversation than me talking at you. So let me jump in. So yeah, school is a game, but it's very badly designed. It has arbitrary points, there's competition, and there's an unclear connection to real world skills or really things of value to the users who are students. And part of the reason for that is school isn't really designed for the users. It's not designed for students. It's designed for adults. And for a varying, different groups of adults, which is one of the reasons it often does its job for the users so badly. So grades are often subjective. The rules seem to change from room to room. Parents and teachers tend to be the only audience for the performance. If your parents are really committed to you getting wonderful grades and mastering academic skills, you might care. But if they don't, you might not. I always say, and I often say this to classrooms of students, I'll say A and F students are very similar. And a lot of kids will look at me kind of odd, and I'll say, well, you've both figured out that it's an arbitrary game, but the decision you made once you figured out that it was an arbitrary game was very different. A students have decided, okay, it's a game, it's played for points, I'm gonna win. So they start to focus on how do I win? They'll walk into a room and say, what do I do to get the A? Not what can I learn, or how do I wanna grow, or what do I wanna pursue? F students have the opposite reaction. They say, you're not offering me any currency that matters to me, so I'm gonna save my resources for something that does. I often think that they have a lot in common. They've just made very different decisions about what to do about it. So RPGs offer alternatives. They both give students agency, and they also encourage teachers to frame the way they approach the classroom in a much more learner-centric way. But one thing that I'm very committed to is they need to be designed for helping develop academic mastery, not merely used for it. A lot of existing role-playing games, and of course we can mention the Dragon game, they're lovely, and if you would like to play them, that's great, but they're not really efficient educational tools, and a lot of educators will have to contort themselves pretty significantly to make them have academic wins for kids. So here are my design principles. I both build the games that I run and use them to teach kids. The first one is academic mechanics. Academic mastery has to be built into the system and approach. Second one is student agency. It's not my world, it's our story. It's something we all create together. Next one, drama is more important than violence. I'm teaching kids what makes a good story. Violence doesn't make a good story. Violence is, sort of the cheapest and most boring way to try to inject drama into a story. It's only what you do if you're not a very good storyteller. Play space. I want to create spaces in which kids feel free to create and play together, that spaces that they feel they own. And as a result, that ownership breeds pride and practice. No fear. There is no judgment involved in my classes. There is only celebration and reward. Kids will often work much harder for extra credit than they will for regular credit. And there's a great reason for that. And all of my students have told me again and again, yeah, I don't have to worry about failing. So of course I'm going to do it. I can only win. So that's very central to how I approach my builds. And finally, story is more important than winning. Part of learning to play games is learning to accept failure and practice failure and think about struggle and disappointment. There's a lot of social, emotional learning going on. It's critical to encourage kids to explore that and feel safe to fail. So my games begin with kids voting. This is a sample of the more than, gosh, it's almost 20 different games that I've built for kids on Google Slides. I will give them short introductions and pitches for each of these worlds. And then the goal of the voting is not that the majority wins. Oh, yes, somebody has something. Oop, I thought I heard someone for a moment. Is there anyone who wanted to jump in and ask a question? Okay, I should keep going. I'm seeing, thank you, the one person who's nodding. Thank you very much, thank you. So yeah, the goal here is I will write up every student's name and I tell them you can vote as many times as you like. Only don't vote for the games you for some reason really don't want to play. And the rule is we're going to look at the ones that win the most votes, and then we're going to talk until we all agree. And I'm very clear on this. The reason we're doing this is we're finding a world we can all commit to. This story is going to belong to everyone, which means everyone has to be excited about it. If you do a group project in school and it's something you don't want to do the project on, of course you're not going to commit. So we use this as a conversation starter. And very often if kids really are entrenched, you know, one kid's like Beast Preservation Corps, and another kid's going, no, I want to go to the future. I want to do Mecha Magi. We'll make Mecha Preservation Corps and we'll squish the games together and create a new world just for them. I always caution them though, if they make that decision, that's more work and more creativity. But the nice thing is since they choose it, it becomes something they're very passionate about working on together. After they vote, we talk about agreements and safety. So we go over safety tools. I use video controls and we also do the X card. I've found online, weirdly, there are some tools that make safety even easier. Private messages are an absolute gift. A student can quickly and quietly, without even changing the facial expression that they have on screen, drop me a note and say, I really don't want this. And I can immediately, without even identifying who told me what they're not comfortable with, say, all right, I'm going to remove that. And we move smoothly along. The agreements are a series of loaded questions that help us build the lore of the world. They're different for every setting. The one here is from is a high school curriculum game that I'm building with a high school teacher. Full year curriculum in AP Human Geography. It's really cool. I'm excited. But the point here is they don't have to choose from the list. They get to discuss, and there's always follow-up questions, and we write the lore up together. The point here is to ground the setting and give them ownership of the setting so that by the time we get to characters, they're already immersed in a world of their own creation. So they know the foundational lore, that it's their lore. And as a result, the characters are very natural once we get to that point. So after that, we have them making characters. I use a couple different tools here. For my new students, I have online character keepers with drop-down lists so that they can get ideas of different drives, downfalls, traits, bonds, and quirks. Sometimes I'll add the category gear. If it's a science fiction story, they always want gear, and that's fine. But one of the key elements to character design for me is teaching them basic literary analysis. So what is a character? A character is what they want and what they struggle with. These are the things that matter to an author. They're the things that animate a story. They're the things that make readers care. So unfortunately, a lot of other games focus on the what, not the who. So there's a lot of video game character building, right? Well, my character has a giant blah, blah, blah. They can fire blah from their blah, and they fly a blah. Wonderful. You just described a kitchen implement to me. That's a Cuisinart. That's not a person. So we talk about what makes a good character, right? Who did you care about? And they write descriptive phrases. Now, the important thing here is, although these descriptive phrases are qualitative, they do end up helping them perform what are called moves. So anytime you want to make a roll of any kind, you need to build a dice pool. This is Blades in the Dark mechanics. So each of the tags on your character sheet that you can explain contributing to the description of how you're doing what you're doing gives you another die, up to a maximum of 3, 4 if you've managed to get somebody to help you out and loan you a die. And that starts happening a lot once kids realize they can do that. It's like, I got a bond with that guy. Yeah. Can you give me a die? Yeah, I got your back. I'm going to do this. So the rules are designed to incentivize collaboration. Let's go to the next. Quirks are great too. I love quirks. People will think, how on earth is it going to matter that I have golden hair? And, you know, I've had lovely moments where kids have noticed on somebody else's sheet, dude, you have golden hair? You never mentioned that. And he'll say, wait a minute. So can I whip off my hood and like my hair can come out and it'll be like really epic? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And after that, it becomes the signature move. The same thing is true with downfalls. There's a very important piece to downfalls. I'll go right back. That actually is not a negative. It's a positive. You can always use your downfall to add to your dice pool. So the kid who struggles with hyperactivity or says, oh, my character has a problem, they're insecure. In moments when their character's insecurity would really push them to try harder to figure something out, that downfall becomes a strength. So there's a strong message about downfalls not being a negative, but rather a positive. So advancement is entirely handled by something called story points. And I ask students to grade themselves. At the beginning of every class, this usually takes about an hour. The second hour is spent in game. We read every story aloud. We clap like crazy and cheer wildly. There's a lot. I'll allow them to read if they wish, but if they want, I'll read and of course use ridiculous voices and ham it up. The point here is to create an opportunity for kids to get recognized by peers for academic skill practice. One of the strangest things about writing classrooms is very often writing is a black box. You write something and you hand it to the teacher. Your friends never see it. They never read it. They never tell you, wow, that was a great story. And then people are confused why students are really committed to performing on a sports field, but are uninterested in writing. Everything about the neuroscience says students absolutely thrive on peer recognition. If you want to create an effective game, give your users what they want. The reward kids want is a feeling of community and recognition by peers. So this is my strategy for addressing that. Kids get to vote for their own level of story points, anywhere from 1 to 5. Very simple. 1's, I barely even did anything. 2 is, okay, there's like a paragraph. 3 is, I wrote a decent story. 4 is, ooh, I'm pushing it. 5 is, holy monkeys. We often will, you know, when kids will be like, somebody's story will get read and a bunch of kids will be like, holy monkeys, and we'll all cheer. And that's, you know, because they wrote 10 pages. So the other thing is when we're reading it aloud, we do get the chance to improve it, but it's always within the context of we're editing right now to improve the story because this is our collective story. This digital space belongs to all of us. We want this story to be as compelling as possible. Now, those story points that they vote on for themselves, and they're very honest. You know, sometimes they'll be like, well, I really want 3, but I kind of feel like I got a 2. And I'll be like, okay, you can have 3 today. Will you promise me to overperform tomorrow? And they'll be like, yeah, I got this. So it's very much a negotiation and rewards-based and celebration-based rather than judgment-based. The other bonus here is this is where I get to do differentiated instruction. Whatever each student is struggling with, I offer a bonus point. So if I've got a student who struggles with compound complex sentences, I'll say, all right, I want at least 5 compound complex sentences, and I want you to use a semicolon once, and I want you to use a colon once. And they'll go, okay, for a bonus point, I'll do it. So then you've got another way to make an extra point if you're actually working on correcting your material. It also means your friends cheer you again because they know you were struggling with it and they see you nail it to the wall. Another piece of this that I'm really excited about is the way in which it incentivizes kids to level up. I work with mixed age groups, and I think oftentimes separating the grades creates a problem. We're losing an advantage. Mixed age groups have a huge power to inspire. Younger students look up to older students' work and get really excited and try things they never would have tried because they see older students doing it. Older students, conversely, feel like they have to really show off, right? Like I got to flex. I can't have a story that's not up to the standards of 7-year-olds. I'm 13, and they will really excel in an attempt to show the younger kids how it's done. So next piece, drama clocks. This is the way that I scaffold tension and engagement in my PNP games. And it's also a great method for helping kids who have different needs. So drama clocks say, it's a very simple concept, something dramatic is going to happen. unless everyone tries to fix it. So perhaps you need to cook a lovely meal for a fierce judge competition. And if you don't, your friend who owns the restaurant is going to go out of business. So you better win this contest. The goal here is non-violent, but still tactical and collaborative moments of high drama. Now, the rule is everybody gets a certain number of moves, but you have to succeed a certain number of times in order to prevent the drama from occurring. That's one piece of this, and it's very exciting, and kids get really into, okay, what am I going to do? And then what are you going to do? And how can we all do this? The other piece of this is it leaves notes on the slide deck. Students who have difficulty writing new stories on their own very often will use these sketches, these notes, as a way to check in, okay, what happened in that scene? And then they can rewrite the scene as a story because they have a skeletal structure for that scene. And this, of course, gives them a model to work from when they're struggling. So feedback, it's crucially important. I send qualitative feedback at the end of every one of my class sessions. I evaluate the students' portfolios for 5 different Common Core standards. That's a common set of standards that's used in the United States for educational attainment. And I discuss their narrative writing, their organization and grammar, their editing and their willingness to grow and change, their collaboration and speaking, and then finally their use of technology. If this were a classroom, and again, I mentioned earlier, I'm working with a classroom teacher on a full year approach in a human geography classroom. We're discussing how you can use portfolio work and then allow students to pick a single portfolio piece that they then sharpen up for their summative assessment, which is rubriced and graded. So these are the things I'm up to right now. Like I said, I'm working with a teacher. You can find them online. They got a podcast too. These are gamer educators like the rest of us. So we're using a GM-less approach. We're working with larger groups. It's exciting because it gives me a chance to experiment with a lot of different tools for making a larger classroom approach functional. I'm releasing tools regularly. You can find them on my itch page. If you're interested in drama clocks, I've created a system agnostic 2-page tool that you can use that with. Same thing with a design for scenes that I use to teach kids how to develop their own scenes for role-playing games. And it structures them in a way that also encourages them to be able to write their own scenes in stories. And then finally, I'm working on a training program. I've been working with a couple of different after-school programs, and one of them has asked if I would be willing to train their tutors in my approach. So I'm developing a digital approach for them. And I'm also working on a curriculum guide that I'm hoping to find lots of educators who are willing to write really focused academic curriculum chapters for a book project. So this is all the stuff I'm up to. Here's a bunch of resources. This presentation, I'll make the link available. It'll be public. You can go here, click on anything you like, talk to me. You can reach out at all these various places. And yeah, that's the whole shebang. And I would love to hear anything anybody would like to ask. And I'll stop sharing just so I can see everyone's faces. Hi. Please feel free, if you want to raise hands, that's fine. You can do the little icon, the reaction emoji. If you want to just wave at me. Hi, is it Dorian?
Yes.
Hello.
Thanks for the talk. Was very interesting and yeah, kind of funny too. Thank you. I would like to, you said drama is more important than violence, and of course the struggle is more important than violence. But I also heard from people who do projects in a similar way with especially younger students, that it's still possible for them to express violence, for example, in projects like making a computer game or something. So the ground rule is don't do something that's only violent, but especially in storytelling, there could be a possibility to combine the things or to say, I have a, a demon in a violent world, and he's struggling to use violence, but violence is all around him. So do you have something like that's a border, a line that shouldn't be crossed, or do you had some good experience, or do you say it's better to not go this far and just keep it in a safety, healthy environment? Do you have any experience in that?
Yeah, well, I mean, having worked with, this has been what, 3 years of teaching nonstop. So I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of kids, and they've written hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages, actually thousands at this point, of stories. And of course, some of them are interested in engaging with violence. This is, to me, part of the work of an educator, right? You interact with culture and you interact with students' needs, right? And this is where student agency and your mentorship kind of can sometimes be in opposition. What I do is I use it as an opportunity to model the use of safety tools. So what I will explain is, if a student wishes to write a story about a genocidal maniac blowing up a planet, it's an example from a couple weeks back, we will read the story and we will celebrate, and then we'll have a moment where we're like, oh, how does this fit in? And I will often model using the X card, and I'll tell kids right up front, I'm not very comfortable with violence in my stories. And I'll say, I want to explain, you're welcome to write those stories, but here's my personal perspective and why it makes me uncomfortable to work with violence in our stories. And the answer I give is, I worked in the South Side of Chicago, and in the 4 years at the school that I was teaching at, 4 of my students, 1 each year, were shot. Out of the 4, 1 died. 1 was fully incapacitated, 2 recuperated. And I will explain, having experienced violence in my life and seen its impact on communities, I think the important thing to know when you include it in a story is how it impacts people, and to treat it maturely. Violence is never positive. It's never transformative. It doesn't lead to solutions. It leads to cycles of trauma, in my experience. And that's what I frame. And I say, now, if you're interested in violence and you'd like to work through stories where you deal with violence, I accept that that's something you're interested in, but in the story we tell together, I'm asking you to take a different approach. It doesn't mean you can't have action. It doesn't mean you can't have conflict or drama, but it does mean that I'm expecting you to try to solve problems in a nonviolent way, and to be interested in figuring out how to make your stories less violent. I'll also frame it, and I have a blog on this. I think violence is a sort of almost a cultural toxin globally in our fiction. And I think it's interesting. One of the things people get hung up on in my approach, they'll say, oh, what about nonviolence? And I always sort of get a little interested, because I'm like, boy, there's a lot of things I've talked about, but the first thing is, why can't I kill people? And the short answer is, because you can't in real life. And the long answer is, most of the problems that we face as a species are not going to be solved with violence. In fact, they're going to be exacerbated. You can't punch climate change in the face. You can't punch systemic racism in the face. You can find individual racists, but punching them in the face, while it might feel great, won't solve the systemic problems that are affecting people. So as an educator, I think that it's my duty to my students to try to teach them in the most ethical way possible. And that's the reason that I've come to my approach. And the funny thing is, I find that students, conversely, when you actually give them freedom, they end up doing really normal things. You know, you'll give kids superpowers and they'll end up saying, yeah, well, let's figure out which teenager has a friend who knows a boba place. Yeah, we're gonna go for boba. And then they'll be like, is there a karaoke machine? I want there to be a karaoke machine. And they'll end up making a viral video using their powers, singing karaoke in the boba bar. And that's the story they want to tell. They don't want to find a supervillain and punch them in the face. So I think it's about your approach. And if it's something you wish to work with and think through, I honor that. It's not in mine. I see Janine and I see Olof. And please tell me if I mispronounce your name. Please let me know. And I apologize in advance. And thank you.
Yeah, Janine is fine. Thank you for the really interesting presentation. I just had some question regarding your target groups.
Yes.
Like which age groups have you worked so far? So what are the youngest students and what are the oldest? And do you have experience in working with this way with students with special needs, for example?
Yeah, I've worked with a lot of spectrum kiddos with ADHD, ADD. And interestingly, one commonality is parents who were really worried about trying anything with a screen for students with certain types of processing issues have been really floored. There's been a lot of like, wait, how does this work? They're on the screen for 2 hours and they're excited. A lot of my students like to stay after. So they have after parties and they trade who gets to be in charge because they're excited to write together with the friends they've made. I can talk more to that in a moment, but I think there are a lot of reasons that the approach works for both kids on the spectrum and kids with attentional issues. As far as age range, currently I post on my site 7 to 13, but I've worked with kids as young as 6, and some of my students who have officially aged out are now doing their own classes and we're writing games together. So they've moved into game design and we're talking about mechanics, we're talking about setting and theme, and they're building all the dice and it's great. I'm currently working, as I said, on that curricular approach with high schoolers. So I'm working with a high school teacher and we're doing a unit-based approach to teaching human geography, where the students begin, they play the history, and they explore we carefully coded them not as colonialists, but rather as fleeing from destruction, because I was not okay with colonialism. But they explore a new map and they have to sort of find a home and build a city. The next phase is they play the next era forward. They play characters dealing with immigration and figuring out the different groups in their city and how they balance. And then we're bringing that all the way to the modern age. So it's an approach that's very flexible. I also have several games on my itch site that use this same approach for adults. So Holdfast Station is going to be published in the fall. Right now, there's a free beta that's up on my itch page. Zero Samurai is, it's not a Japanese game, but it uses Kurosawa's, a lot of the way I approach this is influenced by the writing techniques of Kurosawa's team. Just because I got a biography from his last living writer and got really nerdy and read the whole thing, and my RPG brain was like, this is all about role playing. So I think it's an approach that's flexible in terms of age groups. It can work for older folks. It can work for younger folks. It's rules light, but it's also got depth to it, I hope. Did that answer your question? I'm sorry, Dorian, I didn't get a chance to ask you. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, you did. Thank you.
Okay, great. Olaf?
Yeah, one technical thing. Could someone please put links into the Etherpad so people that read up the Etherpad can also find the documents that you talked about? Maybe Michael, you could, or someone else could Google the page and insert it there, so it's directly linked. And the other thing is your approach about violence. I actually have seen projects of students that wanted to work about violence, but in a very different way, because they wanted to explore victimhood and fear. And that's a very different approach. So I would suggest when we talk about violence to keep in mind there is perpetrating violence and even wanting to enjoy perpetrating violence, degrading others. And there is talking about violence in the actual life. One Ukraine, for example. Want to talk about it, want to express it, and there are very different aspects to it. And I'm always welcome for the second part. And just as you, I have a problem with the first part.
Yeah, I think that's a very powerful type of story to tell, but also I think it requires a level of subtlety and attention to each student's needs that can be very demanding, because you have to make certain that everyone's okay. I think safety is even more crucial in the classroom. And when you're dealing with sensitive topics, making sure that they're moving and profound, but not damaging or difficult, it requires a deft touch. So I respect that. That's a powerful thing to be able to do. Is it Malin or Malin?
Marlene, yeah.
Hi, Marlene.
Hey. Yeah, I'm sorry I was a bit late, but so maybe you already said, but I'd like to know how you actually got started with the anti-program, the project, and maybe, no, actually, I think what I actually want to know is, it's a work in progress, these kind of things, right? They always develop and develop, and you keep going and trying new things. All of us do at work. Did you ever do something in part of this progress and this program and the development of it, where in retrospect you think like, no, that didn't work at all? Like this was like
1,000, yes, every day. Boy, yeah, so many things. Do you want me to address a particular one?
No, I guess it's just a bit of interesting to see what kind of obstacles maybe you had to take, you had to conquer in order to get.
Well, okay, let me give you an example here. This is a good share screen quick one. So when I began, and I still do this a little with starting kids, I will use a character keeper on Google Sheets. So here's an example character keeper. You can see that it's very quick. You can select your special ability. I didn't go into those. From a drop down, you can select your drive and your downfall and all your different bonds. The bonds are the most fun because kids will be very basic with these. They'll be like, well, I'm friends with, and I'm like, no. I want to know that you're exasperated with somebody, or you're at ease with them, or you've heard stories about them, or you're best frenemies. So this is a way to encourage kids. But if you look down here, I initially was very PBTA about moves, right? So here are all the results from moves. And this ended up being an absolutely terrible approach. This is too much to read. It's boring. It's kind of beside the point. What I really wanted to do was get kids answering the question of, okay, you do that. What do you think should happen because you did that? What do you think the response will be? And encourage them to be creative. So here are the moves in Monster High as opposed to Beast Preservation Core, which are, and I'll scroll down a little bit. This is an example of one of the things that I've changed. You can keep your cool, you can monster out, you can get physical, you can figure it out, or you can support people. And it just gives you an idea of this is a way to solve a problem, right? And then what happens because you did that? Well, you move a drama clock, you add to somebody else's move. Maybe you could make a bond. You could take a heart or a piece of stress. You could find out the truth about something or an answer to a question. And then here are some of the negatives. Now, does it tell you when you roll this precise thing will happen when you do this? No, because that's not the game we're playing. So this is, and again, even these character keepers, as much as I love them, oh boy, if I had my way, if I could take the drop-down menu trick and put that in my slides document, oh, that would be the best. That one drives me crazy because in terms of tools, it's really bothersome to have to toggle between the spreadsheet and the slideshow. And the spreadsheet doesn't allow for the kind of creative play. And I can show you, like when they get going on this stuff, they do these wonderful, huge, massive tomes of information. They create bestiaries and, dictionaries of languages they've made up. And the wonderful thing about the slides deck is it's this living document, sort of like a Minecraft world, but they're creating what isn't, in essence, a book, right? Together. And they get to collaborate outside. So my problem is, boy, if I need those drop downs, I have to make them toggle. And if I could have those drop downs in my slides document, it would be perfect. Usually after the first game I play with kids, they will ignore, I'll say, do you guys want to use the character keeper? And they'll all go, no, to heck with the character keeper. We just want to write our characters. And, they will start uploading their pictures of different scenes and, making character galleries. And of course, when you get down to it, they'll have page after page of story. And they'll be reading each other's stories and, commenting. And so, yeah, I have a lot of different things that I would love to do. In a perfect world, I would love it if there were a dice roller right here in this app, but there isn't. So we use Roll-A-Die for Google. And instead of having them roll, I will, I'll boot up the dice and then I'll click to keep them spinning. And I'll say, you say ready, set, go. And when they say go, I'll let go. And then everybody gets to, because we all see the dice at the same time. So it's a nice communal moment of drama. But again, that's another thing I would love. There's so many things if I had my way. But yeah, I'm always iterating. I'm always coming up with different things. I've just recently put up on my itch page a math system for doing resolution using cards or 10-sided dice that helps with pre-algebraic calculations. Happy to share that and show that to you guys if you're interested. But yeah, it's definitely a process. Always learning and feeling behind, but excited.
Yeah. Okay, but sorry, guys. I just understood that now. But you've always done this online, right? Not in person with kids, or
so I have taught for 20 years in the classroom,
yeah.
And I was always running games for kids, but usually after school, during lunch, different times. This online approach is one I developed during the pandemic because
Okay.
a group of kids I was working with had to move online. And I found that most of the online tools were focused around combat and conflict. And I asked the question, what do I want as a designer my kids to learn? And the answer was, I'd like them to write stories and create worlds, not learn to move small figures and murder things. So that was the impetus for this.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Gets? Did I say it right?
Yeah, it's guts.
Guts. Okay,
But
got you.
yeah, it's fine. In the beginning of your presentation, you talked about A and F students who share the
Yeah.
same secret.
Yeah.
About beating the system school. And I have the chance to teach students at the university from time to time, and I try to tell them the same, so we can work together on the. Yeah,
too late.
Yeah, that is my question. So, do they understand it? Because after 12 or 13 years in our school system, it's so deep into them that they don't understand, and then always going back to the game school and trying to get points and grades. And I'm sitting there, and everybody of you will get an A. So you don't have to do this. Just talk about content and what you want to learn and how to create a good class together. Yeah, that's my question. Do they understand it?
I think it's a little bit like asking, can you get players of Dungeons and Dragons to play other systems?
Yes, yeah, that's, or is it, or do you just change the system? Yeah, because you're playing a game in your class. Is it a little bit like changing the system, or is it not that?
So I think value shifts are difficult, right? Cultural shifts are difficult. This is one of the reasons that I always find it interesting. I've had people literally say, when I propose nonviolent gaming, they're like, what do you even do though? And I'm like, really? That's all you can think to do? Wow, okay. But that's how deep the conditioning is, right? And grades are very much the same. School and many years and let's say decades, right, of conditioning. This is how you win. The only important thing is that you win. You must pass your class at the very least. If you wish to excel, you must get an A. Grades are what matter. Find out how to get an A. The problem is, as in all bad design, it has focused kids on a goal that is ultimately completely irrelevant to their lives. Very often, A students, this is the other similarity between A students and F students, deep-seated academic insecurity. F students, I think I'm, can you hear me now?
You're back, yeah, but you had a few lags.
Yeah, you were lagging a little.
Well, so I find that A and F students share deep-seated academic insecurity, in addition to their understanding of the arbitrary game-like nature of school. And the F students feel like they've been essentially judged and emotionally hurt. They've been told repeatedly what to them sounded like you're stupid by grades. You're bad at this, you're stupid. This is not an opportunity to be rewarded. This is an opportunity to be ashamed. And as a result, of course, they opt out. A students, conversely, have a terrible insecurity because they're worried they don't actually have skills. I've met so many students with perfect grades who are absolutely paralyzed by fear, can't make decisions for themselves, have a real difficulty doing anything that is for the purpose of learning. So they'll come to college and they'll say, well, I don't know what to major in, and I don't know what classes to take, and I don't know if I'm actually any good. Maybe I'll fail my first class because I don't know if I actually know how to write a paper. I just obeyed what my teachers told me. I did what was necessary to get the points. So can I solve all that with this game? No, I wish. This is a larger cultural and contextual shift that I think is ongoing in education. I think it's going to require relentless, steady effort by educators at every level. I think creating opportunities and ways in which to surprise students and get them to step outside of what they think the game is can often be a positive and transformative experience. But I'm not going to tell you it's easy or that I have any secrets. I've figured out a way that works for me, and I'm trying to figure out how to help other people learn to use it as well. But yeah, I don't know. I'm always excited when people are like, I'm coming up with a way to make kids forget about grades. I'm like, great. How do we do that? Yeah.
Thanks.
Quite all right. I see Nachi and then Olof. Okay, I got it. Okay, great. Oh, you're muted.
Oh, yes, I realized. Thank you so much for the interesting talk. It's great. I've also been thinking about how to get, like, a friend of mine is in adult education, and we talk a lot about that. And I've been thinking what would you kind of, she teaches German to foreign language learners. So yeah, what would you maybe recommend because the storytelling aspect is great, could you just, maybe, I've been thinking about maybe translating one of your games, or maybe have her do that. So that sounds great, because I think this playful approach sounds amazing when it comes to learning a language.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I'm an English language arts teacher. I'm an English teacher. I also am certified to teach Japanese. I have my master's in Japanese, which is a weird. So I love language.
Degree in Japanese.
You do? Okay.
Yes. Hi.
Nice to meet you.
Explains the Kurosawa game.
Well, yeah. So actually, that's my wife's grandfather was Kurosawa's last living writer, Shinobu Hashimoto. So I met him in person, and he gave me a copy of his Compound Cinematics. And oh my God, I can't recommend more to educators and also to role players, because the approach Kurosawa's team took to creating stories together was very much for education and game brain. My brain was like, this is role playing. There's a million ways in which Kurosawa created character sheets. They had a member of the team, Oguni Hideo, who actually, they called him Master. And his job was to he didn't create the story, but when you brought him a scene, he would either say, yeah, put the gas on that, or he would say, no, you don't want to do that. Don't do that scene. So his job was to sort of guide and shape. And it's just a lot of great advice for rethinking role-playing games and creative collaboration. In answer to your question, I would love to have my games translated. These games that I've shown you here are not actually up on my itch page. There are modular pieces of them that are up. My larger work is on storiesrpg.com. That has 3 chapters of play to learn game that's designed to be printed and played at home by families, but it's all ages. And it's slowly, you do it to learn it. So you do, as you play, you learn each of the mechanics, and each new chapter rolls out different mechanics. So in the first chapter, there's no drama clocks. But by the end, you've got special abilities. And, in the second chapter, drama clocks come in, and like that. For adult education, I will tell you, I have been thinking about running classes, especially language learning classes for high schoolers abroad. And I would actually love to work with anyone who has groups of high schoolers who would be interested in doing language learning and writing in English to perfect their English using this approach. And I'd be excited to both run those classes myself and also train people how to do the approach. But I haven't shared them because I have no art of my own in those. So they effectively act as I want them to be beautiful and exciting. This is one of the tricks of D&D. If you leave a bunch of D&D books around, kids will pick them up and read them because they're gorgeous and they can't help themselves. They're just, oh my God, all this fantasy. I take the same approach with my slide decks. I need them to be beautiful, immersive, and illustrated by the most compelling drawings that create a sense of space, place, and theme and setting. And if I can do that, the kids get inspired to write all the supplemental materials and deeply engaged, and they become curators of the images. But that's the thing that's been the limiter. If I had someone funding me, I would love to pay to illustrate each of these game settings. Like I said, I have nearly 20 at this point. And I would love to release them. And that's actually something long-term that I'm looking at doing, is trying to put together each of these, find the funding, kickstart something, and put together each of these games in an online modifiable format, but with art that I own the rights to. So I'm not stealing from anyone, which I would never, ever want to do. And I know some great artists who would be amazing at doing it. And yeah, I've even talked to them about it, but it's all about the money and I don't have any.
Good luck with that if it ever comes to pass. I cross all my fingers for that.
Hey, if you want to help me with it, tell me who to talk to. I'll put my name out anywhere you like. And if anyone knows
something comes up,
thank you. I will definitely let you know. I saw Olaf and oh my gosh, Steph. Olaf, please.
Yeah, you have shown some fan art, basically some images that your students created. So I'm interested in how much of a focus do you put on nonverbal teaching? Because lots of the material in creation that you talked about is language based, is a backstory and so on. But there are many methods that would work without language. Is that an important part of your method?
It isn't one I've focused on, but I will say that it's very interesting to see the ways in which students decide to jump in and collaborate. So the goal is to create a play space where kids are inspired to jump in and create more, and where creating more is always rewarded and celebrated, never limited. And as a result, I have a lot of artists who have both been working with digital art and also figuring out how to take pictures of their art. And I also have a lot of kids moving into game design, where I'll teach them all the sites I use, how to do color matching, tricks for layout. We'll talk about different kinds of mechanics. I always have one student who's like, I love D20s. And then I get out any dice and explain why statistically D20s are lame. And so it's a range of different creative expressions. I've had kids create entire playlists of theme songs for their different characters and music for their and we'll play them whenever, if a character has their moment, they'll be like, play the song. If I succeed, you got to play my theme. And I'm like, yeah, okay. I had an entire Goblins game where they decided the Goblin anthem was Rick Astley's Never Gonna Give You Up. And so we Rickrolled every single scene that the Goblins were doing something zany. It always became a giant chorus. They even rewrote the full lyrics into like Goblin. Yeah, so I think there's a lot of I think part of the problem with a lot of classic games, and again, I'll mention the Dragon game, is in the expansiveness of the world. Sure, it's immersive, but it starts drawing borders around what you can and cannot do. Much in the same way the rules draw barriers around who you are. What's your class? What on earth is a class? I'm sorry, maybe I'm a bit socialist here, but let's say down with class. What's your alignment? What a reductive and arbitrary way to try to talk about who you are and what matters to you. Tell me what do you want? What's your downfall? What do you struggle with? Who do you love? Who are you afraid of? What do you worry about? These are things that cultivate story intelligence. So yeah, I haven't worked with the nonverbal, especially as much as you. I love the work that you're doing with the expressive ability to interact with objects and figure out problem solving in that way. This is a very language focused approach. Like I said, I have a numeracy focused mechanic that I'm looking to expand out. Weirdly, I don't know how to market this. It's like your kid can improve their numeracy and their literacy by taking my course. Nobody believes that. But it's true. but I have a numeracy approach, which I'm happy to talk about if anybody's interested, but I'm developing things all the time. So yeah, I think it's great. I would love to have kids illustrate the game. If I ever manage a Kickstarter, I have this dream that there'll be like a stretch goal that's short stories by my students, so they get a chance to be published, and all the funding for the stretch goals goes straight to the kids, so they get to sell their work and feel proud of themselves as authors. But again, these are all pipe dreams. I'm also still just working on filling classes.
I'll talk to you about it. Maybe we can come up with something that works, because I think they can build landscapes that could be beautiful enough for illustrations out of paper. So we'll talk.
Oh, I'd love that. Hi, Steph.
Hi.
Steph is a friend, so I know this person. There's a reason I got excited. Yeah. How are you? And you have your hand up. And hello.
Yeah, doing okay. I did call in a little bit late, so if you already covered this, I apologize. Had some stuff going on this morning, so I've got a question about potentially getting some of this into a school curriculum. So I teach at a university level, doing a very hands-on project class, and I noticed that a lot of students kind of dropping off on engagement about halfway through the semester.
Yep.
So I have a proposal in to start introducing some role-playing elements to the class by sort of like linking the lessons to a class character.
Yep.
However, my department's not super keen on accepting a game. So I wanted to know or see if you had any advice about if you've like looked into this, about introducing these elements into a curriculum like this.
Yeah, so I don't know. Yeah, so I think this is an interesting thing. The word game has its own baggage the same way the word education does. I think the first answer I would give is that if you look at the current definition of fun, it's playful, connected flow, which is the state in which you learn the most. So yeah, should learning be fun? Yeah, you bet your ass it should. And if it isn't, you're doing it wrong. So personally, but in terms of selling it to a university board, I can talk with you about this. I think the key is showing them academic standards and exactly how the products will demonstrate mastery. And I think this is the key to, you know, at the top of the hour, I mentioned there's a big difference between using games to teach and designing games for the purpose of teaching. And I think the key element that most people lack in explaining why games can be such a productive and amazingly immersive way to get obsessed with learning, they lack the ability to explain exactly how it connects. So a lot of people will say, well, I'm running this D&D after school club, and kids really like it, and they tell lots of stories, and they talk to each other, and they use critical thinking. That's nice. If I'm an administrator, I'm going to say, tell me how it meets standards. And if you want to bring it into the classroom, or you're wasting my time and money, and I cannot afford to have that. I'm legally responsible for these kids. So I think as long as you can provide clear, academically aligned examples of how you're going to rate work, and I stuck this in here, and I could talk to you about my particular approach. Rubrics that say, here's how I'm going to evaluate work. Here's when the portfolio work is going to come due. Here's how they're going to be evaluated and evaluate each other and develop mastery of the concepts and content. If you can do that, I think you have a much better shot at explaining to them why this is a wonderful tool.
Awesome. Thank you.
I don't know if that was useful or not, Steph.
No, it definitely is. So kind of like focusing in on the, it's kind of like when you set a goal, you want it to be measurable,
Smart.
in addition to, smart goals. So kind of following that sort of process. So.
I think it's really key to be able to say, here's the culminating project, here's what they're going to submit, and here are the academic and content-based skills they're going to demonstrate and how they will be how they will be ranked and graded on that, because
Yeah.
we all know education likes to sort people into boxes.
Yes, they do. So, okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Anybody else want to talk? You all might be exhausted by now. Dorian,
we need
hi.
to watch time a little though.
Yeah, no, this is true. Do we have another session? I apologize if I've run over.
Not here, but the session for everybody, the roundup session is soon. So
okay.
maybe one or
Sure.
two last questions, and then we can.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Dorian, did you want to have a last question? And
Yeah, but I also wanted to mention that there was this person, Ninja Vandewald, who you also asked if the person has a question, but I would like to know, since you worked for such a long time and intensively with kids and storytelling, was there anything that you could learn about storytelling that you didn't read or in books or something that the kids kind of teach you? Not so much about how to work with the children, but something that the children teach you about storytelling. That would be nice.
endless generative creativity. And I say that because, I don't know, let me frame it this way. I think the most ridiculous thing we talk about is, what is an RPG? The answer is, you've already played it. You played it your entire childhood. Everybody plays role-playing games. It's only adults who have forgotten how. We're the dumb ones. We need to create, mechanics and systems, because we've forgotten how to just say, hey, would you like to go to tea? Yeah, no, I feel like tea right now. Let's go. And that's as simple as it is. It's make-believe, right? And students, when they are freed and invited to play make-believe, teach you a lot about how to do it. They will immediately gravitate towards the things they want to explore, and they'll go further. And all your job is, and this is the thing I've learned a lot, they've taught me to ask better questions. It's all about the follow-up questions. Because if I keep asking them questions, they have so much story inside of them. They just need someone to unlock it. And all of a sudden they're saying, yeah, well, that's because of this other place and these other people. And, oh, well, that creature, it's in a link with this. So I feel in many ways, our creativity gets more and more limited by the amount of fiction we consume. We start to put everything into boxes. It becomes Tolkien instead of becoming fantasy. It becomes, World of Warcraft, or it becomes, name the science fiction. It's Pacific Rim instead of a mecha anime, right? It both limits us and gives us tools. So I think the key is, kids can teach you again how free you are to create your own worlds and explore them, and be sort of shameless in enjoying that creativity.
Thank you. Great answer. Yeah. And in the chat was also written, it's fine. There are no more question, I guess. So yeah, thank you very much.
So please, everyone, I know this is the end, but please feel free to email me. Please feel free to drop me a line, contact me on Twitter, Discord. I will again drop the presentation, which is you're welcome to go find it and poke around in it. It's got all the links to everything that you might be interested in. I would love to talk about this stuff. If you can't tell, I get really excited, and I love finding other people in the space who are working on this and trying to figure out how to use it to help reform education. So thank you all so much for your time, and for the lovely questions, and for the space.
Yeah, thank you a lot for your presentation. I hope most of us are either excited as you. So this is where I'll end the recording.